Really?
Yeah.
Hey, Composing Gloves here, and this is a video in the critical listening series. This is going to be a pretty simple video, but it is very important that you understand this. So in Sound and Synth Basics, I have a video labeled What is Stereo? I expect you to have watched that, and we're going to revisit it sort of a couple separate times. But in this video, I want to break down the types of sound fields, and basically the two big types of sound field. There's the artificial sound field, which is the fake sound field. This is a sound field where things are happening. I guess first we should define what is a sound field. Well, a sound field is a field in which sound can happen. It sounds pretty simple. You walk into a space, you've walked into a sound field. Each room is its own sound field. A football stadium is a very different sound field than, say, a small room. So let's talk about some of the things with sound fields that we can do. So there's a real sound fields, like a cathedral, where it's probably very echoey and large and there's lots of hard surfaces, which will bring us to the discussion of acoustics later in this series. Then there is like the football, where it's a very big free field, so your voice will carry for a lot farther and we'll have these big slapback echoes and all this cool stuff. So those are real sound fields. Now we can artificially create these. Whenever we try to simulate a real sound field, it is called an artificial sound field because it has been simulated. There's a number of things that come up, and stereo I actually bring up a couple of them. Like for example, so we could take a instrument. We could take an instrument like a let's say a sine wave. We're not an instrument, but we could take anything, any type of recording, any type of sound. So we have our sine wave, right? And if, say, we wanted to be really creative, we could send this sine wave to a track and clone it through another track. So we have the audio, and then we can pan it left and right. And now people will say, oh, it's now this is an artificial stereo because this wasn't originally stereo, and we've made it into a kind of stereo. It's not true stereo. Another thing is sometimes when you record instruments, you record them with one mic. That one mic has one signal, so it's a mono signal. But you can capture a real sound space. This would not be artificial if you captured it using a stereo technique. Now, it would be a stereo sound field, and that way, if you were to try and take a stereo sound field and make it surround sound, then it's artificial surround sound. It's not artificial, but it's true stereo. So it's getting what I'm saying? Whenever you try to simulate something by some other means, you're simulating something fake by a different means than what it would naturally have occurringly. So if we were to, now this gets really big. So you can take this, for example, and in a real space, there's reverb. So if we wanted to make it sound a lot more real, we'd add some reverb, and we've created this. This is an artificial sound field. We're going to be covering reverb and all these things way later when this will make a lot more sense. But you see, we're now creating more of a sound field for our listeners. So as critical listeners, you need to be wondering, now a great deal of it will be artificial sound field, but I just want to draw that difference right now. There's an artificial sound field and a real sound field. And the differences between them are, one is simply trying to simulate the other, and one, the artificial, can sound like any number of things. It could be fake. So you could have it do all manner of interesting things that could never even exist in a real sound field. Like you could have lots of different reverbs simulating different rooms. You can't have rooms inside rooms in a real performance. It's all going to happen in one space. But you can, if you combine this is where live sound comes in. If you have mics up there, you could feed in real other reverbs into the room and create a really interesting sound field inside that room. That's cheating though. If we're staying completely real sound field, like completely naturally acoustic, then you just couldn't do that. You can't have rooms inside rooms and still hear what's going on in the other room unless you have a really weird building design. I'm sure there's someone out there that made some sort of weird wall design that could theoretically allow this, but like with weird reflection patterns and stuff. It'd be uber I've never even heard of it. I'm just like theorizing right now. If anyone knows of a really cool acoustic building space thing, you should list it in the description. It'd be not in the description, in the comments. It'd be kind of an interesting thing to hear about. But anyways, that is the difference. You will notice also that this piano keyboard, so let's talk about another thing about it. It has been recorded in true stereo. Now, again, if you don't know what I'm talking about when I say that, you need to go watch the video on what is stereo. It's like video 32 32 or 3 or 4. I think it's 34. And what it is a piano, right? If you're sitting there listening to a piano, the higher keys are going to be on, if you're sitting there playing it, it's going to be on your right side. And then the lower keys are going to be on your left side. And guess what? If we were to play some of the high keys here, so we'll come up here, hit some high notes. Actually, now I encourage you when you're judging stuff like this to wear headphones for now until we talk about acoustic setup and stuff like that. So for critical listening, you need a good pair of headphones. Get a good pair. And I already know people are going to be like, what pair, la, la, la. Just if you generally pay over $100, you're going to be relatively okay. Like, you don't need to go all out and pay like friggin', like I have a pair of Beats that I paid like $300 and something for, and I don't like the way they feel on my head because they kind of hurt to wear after a while, but I love the way they sound. Like, even though it's got like a bass boost, not really true, I like having them. A lot of people own them, so they're valuable for reference mixes. And I like the way they sound. I do some mixing on them, but I would if I ever do that, I'm always going to double check because they do have a bass boost. But hey, that's just how those sound. Most headphones will have some sort of discrepancy. Like, when people start talking about these negligible differences, I just get kind of antsy because I'm like, do you even know the amount of crap that goes on when you convert from digital to analog? Like, you don't even know half the crap. Like, you just don't know. So don't even bring that up. So this is our left end. So if we come down here, we'll notice that these, now those are unrealistically low. Those keys don't exist on the piano, but you notice that they move over to our left. Now, wherever they place the mics, if they did, I'm not sure if they panned it really cleverly with each sample, because you could come in here and manipulate this, but it doesn't sound like it's getting as far over to my left as it was to my right. I'm like having to think about all these directions. So it's kind of an interesting deal how they've done this. But you could come through here and mess with the panning and make it into an artificial sound field. So maybe this was really how it was, because chances are they probably had the mic somewhere like this up near the top, and maybe the way the reflections are entering the microphones are just kind of weird. I don't know. So just a really interesting sort of deal. So now you have very clearly in your head these two ideas. Like, I know it sounds simple, but just have those there. And when you're listening to songs, try to identify what was real and what was not. In electronic music, this is very easy, but it gets much more difficult when you get into rock and roll and things that were recorded acoustically in a studio, but have definitely been enhanced. At that point, you're kind of wondering, what did they do? What is this, a real sound field or a fake sound field? Some artists are really purist and want 100% natural sound, and some engineers are like that too. Others are like, slap the crap on there and make it, just do whatever you want. So if it's generally pop, you're probably going to be dealing with a lot more artificial than you will natural, but you got to start with some sort of a bass usually for that. So they'll start with an acoustic field because those just generally sound better usually. Now, sampled instruments have gotten so unrealistic now because they sound so realistic. They're like, it's unreal. So real, it's unreal, because they capture the sampled space, and they've been really wise about how they sample the instrument so that you can then manipulate it from there. It's just amazing. If you have any questions about these sorts of spaces, drop them in the comments. I'm sure we'll get some interesting discussions going. Subscribe. What is it? Patreon. I now have a Patreon, so check that out. Link in the description. And have a blessed day.
Will destroy you.